Welcome to the Awesemo NASCAR Live Before Lock Show, July 4th edition. So hopefully everyone's having a great 4th of July. I'm sure you're maybe getting ready to cook some burgers and dogs on the grill. So hopefully you're having a great day. Of course, for the next hour, we're here to talk about today's race at Road America up in Wisconsin. Qualifying took place just under 2 hours ago. We've got a ton to talk about with what happened there. But the question really comes to Phill is simply, Phill, are you driving that bus to Chalk City today?
Man, I don't know if I'm driving it in the terms of my bankroll, but I've got me a VIP pass. I mean, and it seems like this bus is making stops every block, picking up more people. If you hate slates that are full of chalk, you may as well DM somebody on DraftKings, get a hold of DraftKings Assist and say, can you pretty please get rid of all of my entries? Because today's slate, especially on FanDuel with only 5 entries, it's going to be so full of the same lineups. So many of these lineups are really going to be determined by, especially in cash games, are going to be determined by 2v2s or 1v1s. And, unfortunately, that's just the way that qualifying broke down with 2 guys stalling out on a 4-mile track. But this is the hand that we've been dealt. And if you are willing to play ownership correctly, and we're going to have an ownership update here real quick that we'll be talking to you guys about. If you're willing to play with ownership, you can really give yourself a leg to stand on today.
Yeah, once ownership and projection is updated over awesemo.com, I will let you know. I do know Alex is currently working on that right now, so I'll let you know there. I mean, of course, we kind of know where Chalk City is going to start here, but let's talk about qualifying today. You mentioned about, we had 2, cautions there. Chase Elliott doesn't even get a full lap in, so he's at the rear. He's going to be part of that Chalk City that we're talking about. Bubba Wallace, has issues with his car. To me, like, he's literally an X out for me. Like, you look at what happened with him. What was your overall take on what you saw qualifying?
Yeah, quite frankly, you can just put all of these guys that didn't qualify together in a lineup. Now, don't do that, because other people are going to do this exact same thing, building it like it's Daytona or Talladega. And if you want a duplicated lineup, then just do that, and you can split pennies with the rest of your best buddies. The Bubba Wallace situation, that is a tough one to watch. And people who have Twitter open while you're watching this show, you're going to have to stay abreast of what's going on there, because 3 hours is really, really pushing it for this 23 team to be able to get the backup car off and get everything ready and set up for that for Bubba to go. And quite frankly, the situation that we're in is that the next best pivot off of Bubba just happens to also be one of our chalky drivers. And then there's another pivot off of Bubba just a little bit lower that should see some ownership, but not nearly as much. The sad truth of it is that the guys that you're most likely going to get off of Bubba 4 are still going to accumulate tons of ownership today.
Of course, I appreciate everyone that's joining us here on only 4th of July. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo on YouTube, be sure to do that now. Got a ton of great shows coming for you. I know we got you covered for the NBA Finals, which start on Tuesday. Keep it locked here. We got fantasy football coverage has already started, so be sure to hit that notification bell, and also hit that thumbs up button. We really do appreciate when you do that as well. In terms of, Dominator build here, obviously only 62 laps, a 4-mile track here. So, more times than not, we're talking about Dominator, just like, okay, you want to squeeze in 2, can you potentially maybe get 3? But this is a totally different animal, the fact that it's only a 62 lap race.
Yeah. Before qualifying ever happened, we were in a really tough situation where there was going to be a real debate about, do we even go after a Dominator? If people watched the Xfinity race yesterday, it was just a bunch of guys with different pit strategies, and some guys led some laps, and then they would yield the lead, and then another guy would have the lead. Now, it wouldn't be to near that that level, because the Xfinity Series has that many that fewer amount of laps, but still, with just 62 laps, that is not a lot of Dominator points on the board. And now we've got this hand that's been dealt to us where you can have a guy like William Byron practically sit on the lead all day, and he could lead 85-90% of this race and still get outscored by several drivers because of pure place differential. So, if you're looking for a cash style lineup, you're looking for a lineup with a good floor, I mean, you're just going after place differential today. That is all it is. But if you are looking to try to find a way to find some differentiation, you've got to stick in one of these potential dominators. One of these guys has the potential to lead half or more of this race. And if that so happens to be that case, then they're probably going to end up in today's optimal lineup. So, the ways that you're going to find differentiation today, you're going to have to play with the Dominator. You're going to have to find pivots off of these chalky drivers. It really is. It's we've only got an hour and a half till lock. So it really is a stressful time for you guys trying to build lineups, and hopefully we can find you ways to get different for your tournament lineups today.
Obviously when we're talking about place differential, we'll get into Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and some others, but I want to mention this question we got right before the show on Twitter from Anne Marie. She says, any top starters today or place differential only? So, just kind of go down where we're looking at here in the top 12 here. So you got William Byron, Kyle Larson, AJ Allmendinger, Tyler Reddick, Austin Cindric, Denny Hamlin, Matty D, Ross Chastain, Martin Truex Jr., Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, and Chris Buescher is your top, but Suarez is going to the back.
Yeah. Within that, I'm probably just looking to the top 5 as potential lap leaders. And even then, Tyler had a real chance to win the pole, but then the last few corners before the timing strip, he got loose, and then somehow coming past the area where they stopped timing drivers, he did a complete 360. Tyler, God, I love the driver for what he is, but he just seemed to be all over the place. Yes, he's going to have new tires, so we're not worried about flat spotted tires. But when it comes to actually potentially leading in a road race, I think you take the top 5, you probably minus Reddick out, and you're just looking at those other 4 drivers. If you are willing to take a stab at a Dominator today.
We'll mention Boss Man just hit me up. Projections and ownerships is now updated over Awesemo.com. So if you're an Awesemo Plus member, you can check those out right now. Of course, if you are not a member of Awesemo Plus, you can sign up right now. Just go to Awesemo.com/join. You can get Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. And if you just want a NASCAR pass, you can get that for $9.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. As I peeked over at the ownership, no surprises there. I think we knew, who were going to be the drivers up there. So let's get right into tier number 1 here. This will be the drivers that are 10K and above. So we got 4 of those drivers: Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., and Kyle Busch. Look, ownership's going to be crazy on Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch. Let me start with Chase Elliott. And maybe this is a Kyle Busch question as well. I know there's a lot of our audience that they may just be a single entry player. They're a single bullet player in these massive GPPs. How do you handle the thought process of Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm locking both of those in. That's my starting position.
Yeah. I mean, God, it's so tough to get away from these two because they both have the highest floors and the highest ceilings out of everybody today. When you're talking about Elliott, you're talking about a driver that's won 5 of the last 7 road races. He's so good, especially in these more technical events. But he cleans up practically wherever he goes. Kyle won the Xfinity race yesterday. It's really kind of odd, and I don't know if there's a reason to explain this. But when you look at Kyle's finishes at technical tracks over the last 10 races versus these stadium road courses, the Rovals, you've got a completely different driver. At the Rovals, he sucks. He has just not been good. He is DNFing finishes in the 30s, but then when you get him outside of that, at places like Sonoma, at places like Coda, at places like today. I mean, he's a fantastic driver. Yeah, if you are doing 3 max or single entry, the ownership on these two, like you said, it's going to be crazy. You know, you are looking at probably the 2 highest owned drivers on the slate. But in a world where you're running every possible scenario, the majority of your scenarios, these guys, if they're not winning, they are finishing in the top 5. You know, I've got in my 3 max, I played them both in all 3. My single entry, I've got them locked into single entry. I'm just going to try to find differentiation somewhere else besides taking the stance that these 2 are going to fail.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the question we're all asking ourselves here. And I'll mention a question that's already come up in the chat about how much cash can we leave on the table this week? I mean, obviously everyone's going to be trying to jam in, you know, some of these high placed differentials. When you look at Elliott and Busch and maybe, you know, they're maybe looking for some salary savers down below. But, you know, as you were building your lineups, I mean, did you find yourself just leaving a ton of money on the table?
In some of my lineups, yeah, there is definitely more than what I normally leave on the table. If I have a lineup that has $500 or more, then I'll start playing around with it, because I generally don't feel comfortable leaving that much left over unless we are talking about a super speedway race. But just by the nature of the way that this field has fallen out, I mean, you're going to find a situation where you probably are going to be sitting somewhere with $1,000 or more in salary, especially in cash games. And it's probably going to be even worse on FanDuel, because some of the place differential guys are really priced down this week.
Of course, if you do have any questions, you can leave that, whether it's in our premium Slack channel or premium NASCAR Slack channel. You can also leave that right here on YouTube. We will get to those questions as we do go on. I mentioned a question I saw a little bit earlier over in Slack from someone who is new to NASCAR about how to use randomness today for the big GPPs. Okay.
That's a fantastic question, because quite frankly, based on the hour that we saw of practice yesterday, and of course what happened in the Xfinity Series, you can't always draw a perfect X to Y saying this is what's going to happen. But I mean, this is a narrow track. Like, this track, if you've been watching the NBC broadcast, they have been beating the hell out of this old 1964 footage of Roger Penske taking a lap around here.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I mean, it was cool the first time I saw it, but they have taken this horse out of the barn and just beat it to death. And quite frankly, if I don't see it again for the rest of the year, that'll be fantastic. But that track that you saw in 1964 that looked like it was built by the Army Corps of Engineers, that is the same track that we are talking about today. I mean, it is narrow. It is, you know, maybe got room for 2 cars. Think about that track was built primarily for Trans Am style cars and how big they were in the 50s and 60s versus stock cars today. It is a narrow track. There are tons of turns, tons of places to get a bumper on a guy and get him loose or just move him out of the way. I mean, there could be a lot of attrition today. And plus, something else that I noticed during yesterday's Xfinity race is the lower funded teams, they kept running into tons of different mechanical issues. Like, this is a tough track. Not only are we going to be dealing with wrecks, and then there's the tire wear issue, because this is an old concrete, old asphalt track that's going to wear on these tires almost like Darlington. You've got the aspect that it beats these cars up. So if you are a lower funded team, the chances that your equipment's is gonna hold up that any better than the higher echelon teams, it's not there. So yeah, this might be a week that if you've got randomness, and projections are going to be lower because the laps are lower, but you can step up that randomness aspect to probably 30, 40, maybe even 50%.
I know they were talking about this on the CNBC broadcast for qualifying about, you know, where, you know, kind of passing could take place. And Clement asked that question saying, would you say this track is easy to pass on?
There are tons of opportunities for drivers to pass here. Coming up from, you know, where the start finish line is, that uphill climb to the downhill descent where pit road is. That's a super long straightaway that you can just use sheer horsepower to get around somebody. Then there's the hard 90-degree turn. That's a braking zone that you generally see a lot of people try to get the inside line on to pass. Then that's a little bit of a straightaway. And then coming out of turn 3, going to 4 into 5, that's another super long straightaway. So if you can't just outright pass somebody, then you've got the other half of the track with multiple turns, multiple carousels, just tons of places for drivers with road racing experience that know how to, get on the brake and then pedal the throttle down. Those kind of guys that are really good in those type of aspects, they will have ample opportunities to pass today.
Of course, we mentioned about Kyle Busch starting at the back of the pack here, 10,001 on DraftKings. The question over in the YouTube chat was, should I put Kyle Busch on since he has his backup car out?
Yeah, I'm not worried about this car. It would have been nice if they just would have perhaps gone out and ran like a little bit of a warm up lap, but they seem pretty confident in this car. And yeah, it's a backup car, but still, the backup car for Kyle Busch is going to be probably better than 85% of what the rest of the field has.
Let's move on to tier number 2. This will be the drivers in the 9K and 8K range over on DraftKings. So we got Joey Logano starting 14th, Denny Hamlin starting 6th, William Byron on the pole, Ryan Blaney 17th, AJ Allmendinger 3rd, Kurt Busch 16th, Kevin Harvick 25th, Brad Keselowski 20th, Austin Cindric 5th, Alex Bowman 10th, Christopher Bell 13th. I want to start off with Austin Cindric because Craig asked a question. He said, any love for Cindric today, or is the price or position difference pushing you off him? No,
Cindric, he showed everything that he needed to show in that Xfinity race yesterday. He was winning that race. He had a gigantic gap over Ty Gibbs before Ty Gibbs, I believe it was, he lost his engine, and then that closed the field back up. Cindric came in for tires because of just how abrasive this track is. He was afraid that people behind him would pit and he wouldn't, and he'd be out there on old tires. And he, around 8th or 9th position, just got caught up in a bunch of cars beating and banging on each other, and his day was practically done after that. But Cindric, without the weather playing any role in this, and him having a fantastic car, he's definitely in the conversation to win this race, for DFS to be an actual lap leader. Yeah. What you've seen out of Cindric in the Cup Series, it hasn't been fantastic so far. And the only road race that we've seen out of him was a 25th place finish at COTA. But God, I'm not going to hold that rain drenched race against anybody. And plus those other races were typically 1.5 mile races. This is Cindric's wheelhouse. This is the type of race where he's going to excel. If you are looking for a cheaper potential lap leader, I think Cindric is the way to go. If you're looking to spend up just a little bit more with a guy that I think I like a hair better, it's AJ Allmendinger. I love AJ Allmendinger this week. Like he is in a perfect position. I don't know if people are going to be willing to chase William Byron as the pole sitter, but God, give me Dinger. Dinger led plenty of that race yesterday. He's raced twice this year for Colleague in the Cup Series, a finish of at 5th at COTA, and then 7th in the Daytona road course race. Dinger's equipment isn't on par with what Cindric is going to have today, but God, that skill, it's so good and it's so amazing. And this is I wrote about this in the Finish Line betting preview. This is the thing that you've got to remember for both Dinger and Cindric. They're just out there for the win. They are not with the same mentality as the rest of this field, where it's about regular season points and playoff points, where you're at the end of a stage. It's all about how am I going to position myself to be winning this race at the end of the race? And that's all that these two have to care about. And I love that from a DFS perspective, where they can put themselves in that position, and neither one has a salary that's so restrictive that you just absolutely need them to lead tons of laps. At 9,000 for Dinger and 8,300, especially for Cindric, you just need a little bit. You just need a little bit to really make ends today.
Mentioned about give an update here on the drivers that are going to the back of the field. So you've got Kyle Busch with a backup car, Ryan Preece backup car, Yaley due to engine, Wallace due to transmission, Tilley for unapproved adjustments, and Balicki for unapproved adjustments. I know there's a lot of people asking about Bubba Wallace. If you did not see qualifying, was going through his run, and well, the transmission basically went out. that's about the best way to put it. And he was one of the reasons that for what was it Chase Briscoe was having a great run, and then they threw the caution out, and it killed his qualifying lap.
Yeah, it absolutely did. So that's good to know that Bubba's issue was a transmission. So perhaps they just have to swap out a transmission instead of worrying about setting up an entire new car.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Bubba Wallace in that situation. Let me transition over to William Byron starting on the pole, 9,400. So I guess the question becomes is what is his path to being optimal?
The first thing that's working out for him is that pole position. And generally we've seen whoever started on the pole, they swoop in going into turn one. It's the horsepower, we're not worried about that with him being a Hendrick driver. It's just, can he get enough space between himself and Larson, himself and Dinger, himself and Cindric to lead? And this may be the case. I believe the first segment ends at lap 15. So you could very well see Byron lead all of those laps, and since he's out front, he's probably going to garner the majority of those fastest laps as well. Quite frankly, the path for Byron is stay out in front of these guys and lead that entire first segment. And then hopefully whatever strategy him and his crew chief are on, it keeps him around, the say second to sixth place by the end of the race. But people are scared always to play the pole sitter, especially at a road race, but think back to what we saw at Sonoma. Larson had that pole position and he shot out like a rocket, and he led the majority of that race. Very well could see the same thing from Byron today.
Another driver that kind of notable about qualifying, Brad Keselowski starting 20th, 8,500 on DraftKings, 11,400. He spins out, but somehow just doesn't do any damage to his car. So what's your thoughts about Brad today?
Brad's a guy that I've got highlighted as a GPP play. Like if you're in this range, and I expect Harvick to soak up some ownership because of that starting position. He's starting a little bit worse than Brad. Plus you've got his history as just tons of top fives and top tens in recent road races for Harvick. Plus compared to Brad, Harvick's been a much better road racer throughout his career and recently. But Brad offers you some place differential. Like, if we didn't have all of this nonsense with drivers not being able to make a qualifying lap, then there would be serious consideration for Keselowski to, probably be a 25 to 30% owned driver because of that starting position. But, he's not going to see that kind of ownership. It's just a matter of, we've seen Brad bring home top 5 finishes. Can he do that at this track that, back when it was just Sonoma versus Watkins Glen, the track that he was always better at was Watkins Glen because, yes, there is the road racing element, of course, with tons of technical aspects there at Watkins Glen, but there's also the long straightaways, and that worked into Keselowski's favor. So you've kind of got that same setup here at Road America. Maybe that plays into Keselowski's hands, and he can work his way to a top 10 or a top 5 finish today.
Of course, this is Awesemo's NASCAR Live 4 Lock Show. We'll be here for another 30 minutes getting you ready for today's NASCAR race, the Road America race up in Wisconsin. We are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. They have got their player prop contest over there. So be sure to, when you sign up at monkeyknifefight.com, use that promo code Awesemo for an instant first match deposit of up to $100. They just posted some NASCAR lines up there. Kyle Larson, 19.5 points. Chase Elliott, 18.5 points. I don't know how you just don't go more. Chase Elliott, 18.5 from where he's coming from.
Yeah. When I was looking at those two earlier, that God, and if people aren't familiar with Monkey Knife Fight, basically the only scoring that they worry about are finishing position, and first place gets 20, and then it works its way down a point for minus each position, and then there's a 10th bonus for each lap led. So basically, if you let's talk about like Chase, because he's starting so far back. I don't know if I can accurately project him to lead any laps today because of where he's starting, and they may have to come up with some like really weird strategy in order to get Chase back into the top 5 or the top 10 by the middle of the second segment. So with an 18.5, more or less, you are saying Chase first or second. That's the threshold. God, I hate to say it, but based on his history, crap. I mean, Chase should be in the running to win this. So that's a really tough jumping off point. If I can't give him any sort of bonus for believing that he's going to lead laps, it's either first, second, or I'm betting the less.
Yeah, of course. As I mentioned, be sure to use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up for instant first match deposit of up to $100. I want to mention a question that came into the chat a little while ago from Cleveland 27. He says, what do you like in a GPP to get somewhat different on FanDuel? You mentioned this earlier when we were talking about roster construction with only 5 drivers over on FanDuel. And potentially, if you just start your lineup with Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, now you've only got 3 other drivers to go with. What do you do to differentiate yourself?
Right. Okay. The first thing is don't go chasing a Dominator on FanDuel. There's only 6.2 laps led points available today on FanDuel. It's just not even worth trying to worry about it. And let's just say that a guy like William Byron leads half of the race. Well, that's 3 points, and if he loses a couple of positions, then all of those Dominator points they're for naught. I think the best way that you are going to get differentiation on FanDuel is it's going to have to be finding pivots off of the likes of Dillon, Stenhouse, Priest, Newman, Bubba, all of these guys. You've got to find viable pivots in this range. Like if I'm just going to spitball one for you guys, probably the third driver in on a bunch of lineups is going to be Chase Briscoe. Fantastic salary at 6,400, fantastic history as a road racer. He's got races under his belt here at Road America. But what if he wrecks out? What if he wrecks out by no other fault other than his own? What if he gets too aggressive and something happens to an axle or what have you? Well, in that range, who's $100 less than Briscoe that's going to see probably none of the ownership? It's Daniel Suarez. Suarez has a fast car. Had, I believe, let's see if I can find his. He's been running so this year in road races, but if you watch qualifying, he's got a fast car, and if all he has to do to outscore Briscoe, and let's just say that Briscoe doesn't wreck out, that Briscoe just finishes 21st. In that case, all Suarez has to do is just hold his position for the majority of this race, and he's going to outscore Briscoe at just a hair of the ownership.
Oh, yeah. I just looked at the FanDuel ownership for Daniel Suarez. Yes. That's one of those things. And like you mentioned about today, it's about how do you separate yourself from the field when you just know there's going to be a couple of drivers that are going to be very chalky. So immediately as I look at the chart, I'm like, okay, who are drivers underneath 10% to where I can potentially find an edge?
Yeah. That's it. If you guys have access to the top driver tool, just look and see the guys that are pulling up single digit ownership and look and see compared to guys in a similar price range. And of course, it's not just simple. Okay, well, this guy's 9% and this guy's 35%. Let's just swap them. No, I mean this has to be viable. This has to be a reason why you're going to that guy. And more than likely, there will be one of these scenarios where it does play off.
Of course, let's get on to tier number 3. So the drivers in this tier are in the 7 and 6K range over on DraftKings. So we got Ross Chastain starting 8th, Tyler Reddick 4th, Michael McDowell 18th, Chris Buescher 12th, Matty D 7th, Cole Custer 15th, Eric Almirola 19th, Austin Dillon 37th, Chase Briscoe 35th, Eric Jones 21st, Daniel Suarez 11th, Ryan Newman 28th, Ryan Preece 32nd, Bubba Wallace number 36. So question in Slack from Kentwood 83, thoughts on Bubba Wallace. I know there's been a couple of questions over on YouTube about Bubba Wallace. We mentioned about due to the transmission issues, he does go to the back of the field here. So he's 36, 6,000 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. Is this a buyer beware situation because of this team having to change out a transmission?
It very well could be. I mean, they are pressed for time. I keep sticking an eye over here on Twitter looking for some update on Bubba so that we know that, hey, the transmission's in, everything's fixed. He's good to go. But I mean, I'm not seeing any of these updates. We've got an hour left. If you guys see anything, be sure to post it in Slack or here on the YouTube chat. I talked about it at the top of the hour. Bubba has amazing place differential today. Yes, he's only got one top 15 finish in his career as a road racer, but he has raced here before. He had they talked about in qualifying that there was a bit of enthusiasm on Bubba's part because he has seen this track before in the Xfinity series. It's just a matter of, is everything going to be lined up for this team by the time that they have to push that car to back to pit road? And if things are looking iffy, then your pivots are going up to Preece, who's starting 32nd, who's in a backup car himself, or going down to the likes of Stenhouse Jr. and Ty Dillon, that is, who are both going to be chalky options themselves. Like, quite frankly, if you're in tournaments and you've got some Bubba exposure and you don't want to have to sweat this, within the last 30 minutes about whether Bubba's going to make it or not, and whether there's going to be something screwy because they're replacing a transmission this late, then you are probably looking at trying to get up to Eric Jones, trying to get up to Daniel Suarez. I don't know how I feel about Ryan Newman. Like, Newman raced in the Trans Am race yesterday, finished in the top 10. That should be encouraging, but it seems like you get Newman out of that car and you put him back in his stock car and he's slow as all get out. Like, he is slow as molasses. The practice time was absolutely dreadful. What he did in qualifying was not good today. Newman's, what Newman's been doing at road races for the last couple of years. I mean, his best finish has been 19th over the last few years. It has not been good. So, he's starting 28th, but you might be looking at a ceiling of a 21st or another 20th place finish today. So it is scary. Just, the main thing is just try to keep your eye on Twitter. Pockrass will definitely keep us all updated, whatever's going on with this team.
Yeah, there's a picture that I'm seeing from 22 minutes ago where the 23 team is underneath the car working.
What everybody is hoping to see. We don't know. We don't know if this car is going to run.
Yeah, they're going to definitely be working hard to get this car ready here. When we look at some other ones, obviously we mentioned about Daniel Suarez a little while ago about what we saw there. I mentioned about Chase Briscoe. He was having a great run before the caution came out there, and that just ended his run. So he starts 35th. As you look at the drivers in this, obviously we've got a couple of drivers who are in the top 10. But then also we've got some drivers who've got some, great opportunities in place differential.
Yeah. Briscoe finishes of 7th and 3rd here in the Xfinity series. He was always a good Xfinity road racer in his own right. This year, 32nd at the Daytona Road Course, but since then 6th at COTA and then 17th at Sonoma. And quite frankly, at that price with that starting position, you just need another top 20 finish from him, and he's going to be great. Same thing for Austin Dillon. Dillon throughout his career has been a horrible road racer. Like, that has just been the one aspect of his game that Either he couldn't get it fixed or he just did not care enough about it. But he made strides this offseason. He raced in the Rolex 24-hour race. He raced in yesterday's Trans Am race and Thursday's practice. He was the second fastest car. He had a top 10 finish yesterday in the Trans Am 2 race. So, and plus 34th at the Daytona Road Course, but then 12th at COTA, 13th at Sonoma. So he's, the effort that he's putting into it, it is showing improvement. Plus 37th. I mean, just there's so much place differential. Like outside of either of these two getting involved with a wreck or a mechanical issue, it's going to be really tough for either of these two to not find their way into either a DraftKings or a FanDuel optimal lineup today.
Yeah, it's but of course, if you do got any questions, be sure to line those up. We'll try to get to as many questions before we get out of here. Let's move on to tier number 4, the final tier here. So this will be the drivers underneath 6,000 on DraftKings. So we got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 38th, Ty Dillon 39th, Anthony Alfredo 24th, Corey LaJoie 23rd, Justin Yaley 22nd. Of course, he's going to the back of the field. James Davison 26th, Kyle Tilley starting 30th. He's in the back of the field as well. Balicki was starting 27th. He's in the back of the field as well. Ryan Eversley, Cody Ware, Eversley 31st, Cody Ware 29th, Quinn Hoff 33. What's the lowest we can go here?
To be honest, I don't want to go any lower than Ty Dillon. I want to do as best as I can to avoid all of these guys. The one guy that you might take a shot on is going to be Justin Haley. He's got plenty of road racing experience. He raced in this event yesterday. He's seen Road America plenty of times. The equipment, it's so, but it's not going to be on the level of what these guys racing for Rick Ware or Quinn Halfer are doing with. What these guys need to really excel is they need a combination of attrition, and then they need to race a perfect race themselves while their equipment cooperates with them. I can see the attrition part, but them racing perfect races themselves while their equipment holds up for 240 plus miles, it's a really tough ask. Davison, you might be able to tell yourself a story there because of just the years of road racing experience he has in the Indy series, but I genuinely do not like, unless it's Ricky Stenhouse, who's underpriced at 5,900 on both sides, or Ty Dillon. Like, if you're wanting to just build a stars and a scrub lineup on FanDuel and 150 max, I can get behind that with Ty Dillon at 3K. Dillon, he's raced twice in road races this year, 19th at the Daytona Road Course, 21st at COTA. You're probably going to get the same thing out of him today, and he's going to be a valuable place differential play. The same thing for his $5,700 salary on DraftKings. But the rest of these guys, it's either like Alfredo and LaJoie. I think they're starting way too far forward. And then you've got the worries like Tilley. He was the first guy to bring out the red flag during qualifying session today. Cody Ware, he practically wrecked everybody in the Xfinity race yesterday. He is a threat to himself. He's a threat to everybody on the course that he's around, and he's the guy that's had the most experience out of everybody at this track. Like, it just really, if you can do it, just try your best to stay away from these guys.
Of course, before we get into your questions, do want to let you know fantasy football is quickly approaching, and if you trust us with DFS, there's no reason not to trust us with your season-long and best ball fantasy football teams. The same data analysis that goes into our DFS content tools is going into fantasy football. We have plenty in front of the paywall for you to get started, including rankings and a ton of free articles and videos from Waffley and Matt. There's a couple of things you need to do. First, though, go subscribe to the new Awesemo Fantasy Football and follow at Awesemo Fantasy on Twitter, as well as the Awesemo Fantasy Football Facebook page. As I'm just approaching 30 days before my first game, so August 14th is fastly approaching for the first preseason game for the Buccaneers. So yeah, football is right around the corner. It's got a reminder of that a couple of days ago. Hey, FYI, we're about a month away from the first game. So, of course, be sure to check out all the fantasy football coverage we have over there. I want to make some questions or some comments that we got about Kyle Larson. Kick Good says Kyle Larson is a lock for my lineup. Talks about, checking out stats of when he starts in the front of the race. And David Moore brings up an interesting thought here. He goes, if playing Larson's means you're not playing either Chase or Kyle, then you're paying for rake. Also, someone noted maybe Kyle Larson's a way to get different, and maybe something does happen to some of these high place differential. Maybe there's a crash that they get involved in.
Right. Larson's path to outscoring Elliott and Busch, it's a whole lot tougher, but it's nothing that we haven't seen him do this year. I mean, just think back to about a month ago to Sonoma and what he did from the pole position. Larson's in that group with Cindric, Dinger, and Byron, where you need some exposure to him as a potential dominator today, because he very well could go out and lead a bunch of laps, get some fastest laps, and end up, God, we've been paying nearly $13,000 for Larson, and now he's down to $10,500. Granted, there isn't nearly as many as laps as what we've been looking at the last couple of weeks, but still, Larson's a very viable driver to have as a potential dominator this week. And quite frankly, the salaries are so unrestrictive this week. It's so soft. You can probably put together an Elliott, Larson, Kyle Busch lineup that you like pretty well.
Justin asks, he says, Priest or Newman on FanDuel? Of course, Ryan Priest going to the back of the field.
I hate that Priest is going to a backup car, but Lord, I feel like Priest he actually has a ceiling where I think all Newman is just a floor. Newman's ceiling is his floor. They are one and the same. Whereas I feel like Priest actually has a little bit of a ceiling that he can have access to. I mean, we've seen two top 15 finishes out of Priest at road courses this year. Newman's finishes have gone 33rd, 24th, and 20th.
Next question comes in from Jay, and I'm sure it's a question that a lot of people are having. Can you do 100% Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott today, or is it too much?
It's too much. We are talking about Kyle Busch in a backup car that we have not seen on the track yet. And like I talked about, this race could just be full of attrition. There could be wrecks happening everywhere, and your driver could do absolutely nothing and get involved with a wreck just because of who's around him, who's in front of him, blah, 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 blah. So I think this is a week, like if you're doing 20 max, to set a hard capstone at 50% ownership for your guys, and maybe increase that uniques per lineup to 3, just to try to give yourself a chance that if there are multiple wrecks, especially among these chalky drivers, that a couple of scenarios just doesn't absolutely kill you and your lineups. Don't go crazy with ownership this week.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, and Phil, you mentioned this earlier, when you are an Awesemo Plus member, you can see the promo that we got going on right down at the bottom of the screen, is using that top driver tool to look at top 6 percentage and all the various aspects we have in that table to help develop your lines. But I mean, look, I think that as you're developing your lines today, it comes down to that question about Chase and Kyle Busch of exactly what you want to do there. The Goody 2323 says Jones, Newman, or Priest. So we talked about Newman and Priest. So talk a little bit about Eric Jones here. He's starting 21st, 6,600 on DraftKings.
Yeah, out of those 3 for tournaments, it's definitely going to be Eric Jones for me. Even though he's taken a significant step down in equipment, out of these 3 road races, a road course, an F1 track, and then a traditional road race in Sonoma, his worst finish on the year in these tracks is 16th. 2 of those finishes have been top 15, and the most technical of the tracks, Sonoma, he was 11th. So I mean, there is definitely a ceiling here with Jones. Like if you're playing cash, I think the safe play is just to go with Priest because he starts 10 positions further back. But Jones definitely has the better finishing position potential out of all 3 of these guys.
course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. If you are not subscribed to Awesemo on YouTube, you got to do that. Got a ton of great programming for you each and every day. Of course, we'll get you ready for a daily MLB slate. NBA finals start this week, so be sure to keep it locked here also. And also hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. For the Great says, no love for Alex Bowman.
Bowman's in a weird spot. He's starting 10th, so there's not a lot of place differential to get there. He's probably a safe bet for a top 10. His last, going back his last 10 races, his worst finish in a road race is 14th. He did that 3 times. And then the last 4 races in road races, especially everything this year, they've all been top 10 finishes. So I really don't know if you can bet on him for a top 5, but you're probably going to get a top 10 finish out of him. You might pick up a little place differential in there. He's underpriced at 8,100. I don't know about that salary at 10K on FanDuel. It's going to be hard to get value out of him at that salary. But yeah, at 8,100, if you want to get in a few Bowman lineups in there as possibly a driver that does give you that differentiation to win a tournament, then sure, yeah.
Next up, are both Dylans the best cheap plays today?
Oh, I really like Austin, and we talked about him. He's been improving as a road racer. That 37th starting position, there's just so much place differential to gain. Back-to-back top 13 finishes in road races. Ty, that's a much harder sell. Remember, he's in the 96. This is not the 13. If he was in the 13 for Jermaine, then the view would be a little bit sunnier, but he's in the 96. If you're trying to think, okay, well, what's the ceiling potential of the 96? Remember, Suarez was in the 96 last year, and that car was perennially a 25th through a 30th place car. Ty's been able to keep his nose clean. He's got some road racing chops himself, and he's finished with 19th and 21st place finishes at road races this year. Yeah, you might get that. You might get that again, but I bet that Ty's probably going to be somewhere around 25th today. He's going to get you someplace differential, but he's probably not going to be the reason that you win a tournament.
Next question comes from Jim. He says, is Byron a fade today?
No. Byron started on the pole in a road race with his chops, with his speed, a guy that you should have some exposure to as a potential dominator. In my 20 max, I do believe I've got 20% Byron.
Yeah. Next up, AJ Dillon or Chase Briscoe over on FanDuel.
The answer is both. Let's just find a way to get them both in there. But if you are taking a hard stance of one versus the other, I'll say Briscoe.
Priest or Ty Dillon?
Priest has the better equipment, even though he's going to a backup. But God, Priest's backup is still better than Ty's primary car. So give me Priest.
Byron over in Slack says, is making a group on FanDuel playing at least one of Kyle Busch and Elliott in my lineups okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's see here. Next up, Reddick or Buescher? I think those are 2 drivers we haven't talked much about.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to say Buescher just because he starts 8 positions further back. They probably both have the same ceiling today, which would be about a 5th to a 6th place finish. So in that case, I'll take the guy who can actually gain position versus the one that is going to lose in the process.
Who is the best value play today, and why is it McDowell?
Oh, I have some McDowell. If we didn't have all this nonsense with qualifying, I would have probably a whole lot more McDowell in my life. McDowell's a fantastic road racer here. A few years back, I believe it was 2016, he actually won the Xfinity road race. That was racing for Richard Childress. You want to go all the way back to 2011 when he was a developmental driver for Joe Gibbs. He nearly won that race, but had a mechanical issue with, I believe, 2 laps remaining in that race. McDowell's a fantastic road racer. He's probably going to pick up a few positions today, but no, with Dillon and Briscoe starting where they're starting, and then Stenhouse added in that bunch, these guys are going to end up being much better fantasy point per dollar values today.
Mentioned 2 questions about Kevin Harvick. One, Jim asking for your thoughts on Kevin Harvick and Jets World over in our premium Slack channel, saying Harvick or Kurt Busch in the DraftKings 225 GPP.
In tournaments, let's go with Busch. Busch has definitely been improving. His last 4 races, in road races, he's got 3 top 6 finishes. Harvick, I think Harvick is just is a nice cash floor play today at 8,600 with that starting position. But if it's down to tournaments, then I much prefer Kurt Busch.
James asks, is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. the FanDuel favorite punt today?
My favorite punt on God, he probably is, even though 5,900 technically isn't a punt on FanDuel. He really is kind of the lowest that I would want to go. Briscoe's just a little bit more than him, and Newman and Priest are cheaper. But God, I think even though Ricky's not a fantastic road racer, you look at his finishes, he's generally somewhere between 15th to 20th. And if he does that again today at that salary, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat him.
Blaney or Kurt Busch? I haven't talked much about Ryan Blaney today.
Yeah, Blaney's just been so disappointing over the last month, and yeah, he had a good finish last Sunday, but I think that was you had guys running out of gas with 3 and 2 laps to go, and he just happened to not be one of those drivers. The speed should be there for Blaney. And yeah, he's definitely got place differential where he's starting, but I just much more prefer Kurt Busch.
Yeah. Scott says, who are the best tournament 2 dominators? Well, this is not a dominator race. That's about the best way we can put it here. You only have 6 laps.
Yeah, if you are looking for a way to get different, then just by all means play 2 dominators, because that's going to be a lineup path that a lot of people will not want to go down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting of once we do get to lock of what are the ownership and these big GPs going to be. And the 3 guys that obviously I'm going to be looking at is Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, because of place differential. But then how does Kyle Larson fit into that equation? Yeah.
It really will be interesting to see just in what order of these guys starting in the top 5, what route people go with. And quite frankly, I'm starting to worry that Larson is going to become the odd man out, because people are going to say, okay, I want Chase, I want Kyle. If I want to play a dominator, well, heck, I can get Byron and Dinger and Cindric at a much cheaper rate than I can Larson. And God, if we've learned anything from the last 2 months, it's don't fade Larson, even if it's a 62 lap race. I mean, that's if that's the route that people are going to go down, especially as they start Elliott, Busch, and then go, let's just say Dillon and Briscoe in that situation. If they add in Larson, they're like, oh, I really don't like the 6th guy. What if I do Cindric or Dinger? Oh yeah, that looks a little bit better.
Let's finish the show on this question from Josh. He says, do you have a favorite chalk fade of the day?
If you are looking for one of these guys in the back to completely get off of, I think it's going to be the answer that a lot of people have, and it's going to be Bubba, just because we do not know where that car is because of that transmission.
I don't see me getting to much Bubba at all, but that is going to do it for Awesemo's NASCAR Live Before Lock. We'll be back here next Saturday for the strategy show. Of course, on your way out, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and also be sure to check out everything we got over at Awesemo.com. And Phil, I know you got one last thing you want to say here.
Yeah, I just happened to peruse Twitter. Kelly Crandell, who's a NASCAR beat writer, somebody asked her about Bubba, and apparently the transmission swap is already done.
Well, that's good news on that aspect. So, of course, lock here coming up in 30 minutes from now. But that is going to do it for the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. Hope everyone has a great 4th of July, and we will talk to you 6 days from now for the also NASCAR Strategy Show. Good day, everybody.